good morning, everybody. It's so good to be here one more time. I hope that you guys are having an amazing holiday time. Well, wherever you are, whatever you celebrate, I just want to say happy holidays to you, Merry Christmas to you. I want to say, happy Tuesday. I want to make sure I don't leave anybody out. But I just want to send appreciation to you and just to say, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you when it comes. This is your boy, your men's life coach, Rolando. It's Christmas Eve, and I'm seeking to try to be faithful to my promise that I will be here right throughout the week. I also told you guys that my hour is going to be, I'm going to be like a little 1 hour later because, a guy has to get some beauty sleep, right? But here I am, guys, and it's so good to have you as a part of our conversation. I just want to remind you that this is the XY Spark podcast. This is a podcast for men, but we also welcome our female listeners as well, because I find that a lot of our females, they have been really giving some helpful, they've been given some useful information there, and they've been sharing and they've been participating in the podcast. So, guys, I want to tell you this: if you're not coming to listen, shame on you, because the ladies are coming and they are leaving with tools. Shout out to one of my listeners who said, said to me yesterday, Rolando, I'm going to share this with a family member, with a friend. So, I want more of my male listeners to recognize that this space is here for you. This is a safe space for you. Okay, let me remind you that you can also go back later if you want to listen to the full episode of our podcast. You can find it on our YouTube channel. You can find it on our YouTube channel, XY Spark. You'll find that there for our live viewers who join us all the time on the podcast at xyspark.podbean.com. You can like, share, subscribe, and comment on our podcast on xyspark.podbean.com. You can also find our episodes on iTunes, on Amazon Music. You can also find it on Spotify, on iHeartRadio. You can go back and listen to it later. You can also join us and connect with us as well on Facebook, on Instagram. We are there. So, for those who are joining us today, thank you for being here. We appreciate you, and happy holidays to you. If you're just joining us here on the podcast live, we appreciate you. We hope that you're having a fantastic holiday period, and we just want to say thank you, a million thank yous for choosing to be a part of our conversation here at XY Spark. Let me also remind you guys and reiterate that we do offer life coaching calls right here in the moment on the podcast. So today is Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, and we refer to our Tuesday episode as Take Back Tuesday. Take Back Tuesday. And our topic this morning is how to overcome irrational thought patterns. How to overcome irrational thought patterns. And, as a psychotherapist, I've worked with thousands of persons over the past 15 years of my career. And I've seen where irrational thinking has really impacted the lives of so many persons very, very, very much, right? Irrational thinking patterns have really impacted a whole lot of persons. It has really caused so many different lives to go down a path of self-destruction. Irrational thinking is something that we want to learn how to control in order to take back control of our lives. And so today we're going to talk about that. overcoming irrational thinking. Yesterday morning, we talked about what are irrational thought patterns, what do they look like? And some of the things that we talked about yesterday morning was, enabling. We spoke about that as one of the irrational, or rather not enabling, let me correct that, entitlement rather. That's one of the irrational thought patterns that we spoke about yesterday morning. All right. And we talk about performance. Perfectionism is another irrational thought pattern that we mentioned yesterday morning. I want to just encourage all my viewers to share this live. Invite more of your friends to come. If you have a comment, please type it in the chat. And shout out to you wherever you where are you joining us from? I would like to, just to know to send a shout out to you. You can just type it in the chat. Yesterday we had people from the Philippines. We've had persons here from Jamaica. We have had persons here from Nunavut, that is northern Canada, all the way up there in Nunavut. And so wherever you're joining us from, we want you to know that we appreciate your presence. And please keep coming, because we want to hear from you. So if you have a question or a topic that you'd like us to discuss, please put it in the chat. So let's talk about overcoming irrational thought patterns. And the first thing I want to establish is that none of us are immune to having irrational thinking. All right. We are not immune. Hey, chicken and mac, I don't know, it's macaroni. Shout out to you. Thanks for being here. And wherever you're joining from, we appreciate your presence. All right. We're not immune. You're not immune. And as a man, and as you continue to engage and interact, as you continue to pay attention to your thoughts, you may find that irrational thinking patterns are far more intrusive than rational thinking patterns. Irrational thought patterns, guys, they are far more intrusive. They show up more frequently. They tend to be more overarching than rational thinking patterns. And learning how to control or overcome or manage irrational thought patterns will give you helpful tools to take back control of your life. Because you see, the more time we spend in being captives of irrational thinking patterns, is the harder it is going to be for us to really take back control of our lives, right? And sometimes irrational thinking pattern is what adds to us really struggling with your self-esteem, struggling with your self-worth. Irrational thought patterns oftentimes cause us to sell ourselves cheap as individuals, because the irrational thinking make us feel less than. The rational thinking makes us feel that we always need to find validation outside of ourselves. Irrational thinking oftentimes, puts us on the edge of self-doubt, where we are not motivated. We're depressed, we're isolating. So irrational thinking can really become a conquering force in our psychological minds, in our psychological beings. So we want to talk this morning about how do I overcome irrational thinking. So I want to just put some examples out there. Let's talk about it. Now, there are three things, guys, that we want to really establish. Hey, Laurie, I see you, Laurie. Laurie has been, well, one of my most frequent persons who join us in the live. So good to have you again one more time. So we want to establish one thing here, that there are, outside of irrational thinking, there's also distortion type thinking. And then there is what we call cognitive restructuring. One of the pieces that we want to not forget is that irrational thoughts, we refer to those as a cognitive dissonance, something that happens in our psychological mind that is harming us and preventing us from growing and becoming better. So we want to establish and give you some practical examples this morning that's going to teach you how to manage irrational thought. Number one is this: sometimes irrational thinking that we have can be something like, you know what, I can't do this, right? I can't do this, right? This is the worst thing that I've ever experienced in my life. Have you ever found yourself saying stuff like that to yourself? I just can't do it. This is too much. Why me? And sometimes I've even run into persons who, because life is really happening to them more intensely than they would, I've had persons who they blame God, they curse family, they curse the government, they curse their employers, and the irrational thinking, it just hovering over them like a scarecrow in a field, right? And they swim around in this irrational, I can't do it, it's too much, why me, I hate God. They go on, and all of that sometimes is coming from this irrational thinking. And because that's irrational thinking, it creates what we call catastrophizing. We call it catastrophic thinking. So we see the worst in everything, and our brains get saturated with this idea, right, that we have created. And we want to now talk about, how do I move away from this irrational thinking? We say, I can't do it, it's too much, why me? How do we change that? So we want to move to what we call reframing that, or what we refer to as a cognitive restructuring. All right. Cognitive restructuring now helps us to take that same thought that we were saying, I can't do it, this is too much, I hate this, why me? And we want to learn to deconstruct that. How do we deconstruct that? We take that same thought and we say to ourselves, okay, you know what? This situation that's happening right now, it is really difficult, right? It's hard, but I I what? I will get through it. Can you pause and say that? Because you might be here in the live and you're going through something challenging during this holiday season, and you're swimming around in negativity. You're swimming around in your ship of irrational thinking. What I'd like you to pause now and just reflect on reframing that from saying, I can't do it, it's too much, I'll never make it through this is the worst holiday ever, to acknowledge that, hey, you know what? Yes, this is a difficult time. And I'm speaking to you right now. You might be here in the TikTok live. I'm speaking to you. You might be going through something really tough. I'm speaking to you who's joining us live on the YouTube channel. You might be going through something really rough. But let's see if we can reframe that together by saying this: this is really difficult, but I will get through it. And I want you to really believe it. I want you to claim it. I want you to sit and let that marinate for a little bit. Let that percolate for a bit. That, in spite of how challenging it is for you right now, you can reframe that and recognize that, hey, yes, it is difficult, but I'll get through it. You will get through it. You will be okay. You got what it takes. Yes, it's tough now, and you wish that it was somebody else and not you, but you have the fortitude, you have the tenacity to do it. You can do it, but you have to start believing in yourself some more, right? And believing in yourself means confronting that irrational thought, acknowledging that realistically, I will get through it. This may feel permanent, but it's temporary. You will get through it. All right. So that's the first thing and the first example that we just uh, walked through with you. Now, let me just reset the room and say if you'd like to join us live on our podcast, you can do so. Go to xyspark.podbean.com. You can join in the conversation right there. You can join the conversation here. If you're live on TikTok, you can join the conversation there. You can ask a question there because we do offer live coaching. If you want to join us live on YouTube, you can look for us on YouTube on XY Spark, and you can um, share your thoughts. If you have a question, we are open to doing that. So that's the one example. The second example, as it relates to irrational thinking, is sometimes we may find ourselves saying, hey, you know what? If this isn't perfect, this is a complete failure. Have you ever said things like that to yourself? If this is not perfect, then I'm a complete failure. And remember, this morning, what we're talking about here is how to manage or overcome irrational thought patterns. Irrational thinking patterns sometimes is what causes as human beings to compromise our moral standards. We don't have any moral standards. We live our lives where we're constantly craving validation from external forces, right? And what we're saying is if we learn how to manage irrational thought patterns, we will become more confident, our self esteem will be in a better place, and we'll no longer be selling ourselves out cheap. So we want to talk about the second one. Yes, if this isn't perfect, then it's a complete failure. That now is what we call in psychology all or nothing thinking. If you're someone who you're all or nothing thinking type of a person, you know, we want to just caution you about how detrimental that can be for your relationships and even for yourselves, right? And if you're joining us here live on TikTok, I would also encourage you, tell your friends, invite somebody to come. This is the XY Spark podcast. This is a podcast for men. And this live that we're doing right here, right now on TikTok, I also want to acknowledge all my female followers who join us every morning. So, ladies, thank you for being a part of this as well. We appreciate you. So, all or nothing thinking is one of those irrational thinking patterns that we oftentimes allow to dictate how we live our lives. But let's talk about how we reframe that from what we originally talked about to making or how do I say it, cognitive restructuring of that. Adam, shout out to you, man. I see you, buddy. Good to have you in the space. So let's change this all or nothing thinking to something now that is more empowering. So we are moving from if it's not perfect to, right? We reframe that to saying, hey, right, guess what now? Perfect is unrealistic. Giving myself, and catch this, guys, giving myself now what you say, the room, giving myself the room to say, hey, you know what? You know what really matters? What really matters is that I'm giving it my best. And you have to take some time now to create that self validation where instead of you saying to yourself, well, it's all or nothing, you're giving yourself that self validation to look at whatever it is that you have done and recognize that, hey, I give it my best. If you didn't give it your best, you can, well, you have got to work on that. If you did a half-hearted work, if you shortchange yourself, that's a different thing. But if you did your best, if you gave it your best, you've got to move away from that space of perfectionism to really acknowledge that yes, I gave it my best and I did my best, and that's what matters. So move away from this idea that, hey, it needs to be perfect, to acknowledging that I gave it my best. So in your day-to-day interaction on your journey, giving it your best is far more important than you looking through the lens of, if it's not perfect, then it's a complete failure. That is an irrational way of thinking. Move away from that, right? I'm saying, and I'm challenging you to move away from that, to celebrating now the positive things that are happening, in your relationships, in your careers, even if you're doing a project, acknowledge that, hey, I gave it my best. I utilized all the skills and wherewithal that I've got to get it done, right? Celebrate that, own that. That's your success. Don't negate your success because you're telling yourself, well, if it's not perfect, then it's not. No, right? So we want to become more mindful about when we are harboring irrational thinking. All right? So let's keep that in mind as we go forward. So that's the second example. The third example that I would like us to think about is this, right? Where we end up saying things like, you know what, that doesn't count. It was total luck. Yes, it happened because I was lucky. And how unfortunate that can be, that even sometimes when we are successful in something, instead of taking the time to celebrate that win, we say to ourselves, it was all luck, right? And when we do that, here's what we're doing. The distortion type in that is what we call disqualifying the positive. For some of us, we live our lives in this way where we say, hey, you know what? If I hope for the worst and it happens, I'm not disappointed. But if I hope for the best and worse happens, I'm disappointed. And it's so funny because how about hoping for the best, and if it doesn't get to that marker, we celebrate the win that we have had, or we celebrate the portion of the thing that went well. So we have to move away from this space and stop disqualifying the positive, right? We have to celebrate those wins. We have to own those wins. We have to reframe that by saying, hey, I worked hard on this project, right? And I am proud of myself. Can you say that? Hey, Mason, I see you. Thanks for joining us live here on TikTok. I worked hard on this project and I'm proud of myself. Taking the time, guys, to do that. Okay, I see you, basket bison, right? Taking the time to acknowledge that, guys, and to celebrate that is such a powerful way to reframe and retrain our brains to think differently. Remember, guys, irrational thinking can only continue to run its course as we continue to refuse to challenge it. And I'm saying to all the men who are listening here, and even all the ladies who are here live on TikTok, if you are going to regain control over your life, if you're going to take back control of your life, it starts with you challenging those irrational thought patterns. Challenge them every single day, and seek to look at how you can reframe those irrational thinking patterns, because the irrational thinking patterns is what is affecting our lives. The irrational thinking pattern, if we can change irrational thinking pattern, guys, let me tell you a secret. It will help us with so many different things, right? Irrational thought patterns will help us to better manage depression. Irrational thought patterns will help us to better manage anxiety. Irrational thought patterns will help us to beat back low self esteem. Managing irrational um, thought patterns will help us to beat back self sabotaging behaviors because you will start reframing and retraining your brain to think differently. Guys, it's Christmas Eve, and I don't want to make this too laborious for you, but I want to just encourage you guys to remember that when you get right down to it, learning how to reframe those thoughts will retrain your brain and will get you into a space where you are managing your thoughts more effectively. Because remember that you can become the master of your thoughts, or your thoughts can become your master. Mindset matters. Mindset is what makes a man or breaks a man. So it's important for you to work on training the mindset so that you can become more empowered and more effective in the way that you're living your life. Hey, Kermer, I see you. Thanks for joining us. So this morning, guys, as you go off into this holiday, celebrating the Christmas season, looking forward to the new year, I just want to challenge you to remember that you can retrain your brain to think differently. You can reflect on having a different mindset, right? By cognitive restructuring, reframing, working on ways to get your mind in the right place, in the right space. All right. Guys, I'm so appreciative of you. I hope that you join me again tomorrow morning, right? This is XY Spark, the podcast for men. We're live on TikTok, we're live on YouTube. You can go back and download these episodes, right? As much as you would like to hear more on our YouTube channel. We also offer live coaching calls right here, right now, in the moment. So if you have a question, or if you know somebody who could benefit from these podcasts, please reach out to me, connect with me. Let's talk more, because the goal here of this podcast is creating a safe space for men to come and let's participate in shifting the stigma about men's mental health, because there's a stigma about men's mental health that is continuing. And we want to say, hey, we are ready to change that. We're ready to break that cycle. We are ready to do something different. And we want to start right here. All right. Right now. So, guys, thank you once again for being here on the XY Spark podcast. I'm your boy, your men's life coach, Rolando. I appreciate you. Go off and enjoy your holidays. And I will see you again, believe it or not, tomorrow morning, right here between 6 and 6:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. I look forward to seeing you again. And we just continue to remind you guys that personal development is not an event, it's a lifestyle. And we want you to embrace and celebrate that lifestyle as you continue to grow to become the best version of yourself. Never ever forget this, that here at XY Spark, we believe that there is a spark in you, and in you, we will see you again real soon. Have a happy holidays. Bye for now.